Anyway, this beautiful countryside on a beautiful day. Beautiful green fields. Absolutely gorgeous, this pleasant green land of ours. Generally people are quite content. Happily getting on with their lives. And there's general peace. Unlike through the Middle East, a rather barren, arid place, through a lot of it, and there's issues between Hamas and Israel with hate on both sides. Both of them claim they want peace, but not at any cost. In other words, not at any cost to themselves in terms of their morals or their ethics. Which is a bit of a shame. And then there's Islamic State, Syria, Iraq, and all the problems that are going on. Libya, Egypt, elsewhere. One of the interesting things about Islamic State was there's a lot of commentary from Western so-called experts and politicians about how it's not going to last, about how they'll just fall apart and they can't deliver anything. Some Australian expert said something along the lines that the Islamic State might have an ideology, but it doesn't have a system within which it can work. Well, I hate to tell you something, but they do have a bloody system. And if anybody was to watch a documentary on YouTube by a news organisation called Vice News, who managed to join Islamic State people, including their head of propaganda, and ride around with them and join them in going from one village to another and see what they were doing, it becomes very, very clear that actually they do have various stuff that they can do. They have set up their own Sharia courts. They've got their own religious police going around, telling people, well, picking people up for smoking during Ramadan, for alcohol issues, for taking drugs, for taking the name of Allah in vain. They even stop people on the side who have a Western style, possibly a Western style photo or poster on their shop, telling them that that is not what Islam is about. They also stop men who are walking with women to ask them if that's their wife, and if so, to advise them on better ways of dressing. One example being, tell your wife not to hitch up her dress because people can see her ankles, and to wear thicker veils. Things like that. Now this is just basically a different ideology to what we've got. It's their version of freedom, peace. It's totally anathema to what we understand. I've got flies inside. And the thing is, what we understand is freedom and liberal democracy. And yes, we have constraints, but they're legal constraints. Can't do this, can't do that. Out there, absolutely everything. Now, people might turn around and say that they're terrorists. Yeah, possibly. They're extremely violent, particularly against people who are not Muslims or are not Sunni Muslims in particular. So if you're a Christian or a Jew, or even worse, an apostate or an infidel, a kuffar, somebody who does not believe, an atheist, those last ones you will be beheaded. Christians and Jews get the opportunity to either convert or be killed, or in some cases pay a jizya, pay the tax. Now, this is totally anathema to what we believe here in the West. And there's some interesting other parallels to Nazism and other countries. Nazism in terms of taking the young and setting up schools, for want of a better word, for religious indoctrination. And some of that indoctrination is completely anti the West, totally anti-apostates and infidels, Christians and Jews as well, and totally pro-Muslim and the Muslim way of life and belief in Allah. As I say, completely against our way. This is not freedom of religion as we know it, it's freedom of religion as they define it. And it's certainly not freedom of religion. Certainly not freedom of bloody anything. As far as I'm concerned. Now, so if you do want to find out a little bit more from a background of people who have been there, I fully recommend going on to Vice News and picking up their 46-minute documentary about Islamic State, because it will give you a better understanding of what's going on when they move into villages and towns. It's not a case that it looks like they are scaring everybody. It looks like they are accepted, fully accepted, because the caliphate is exactly what Muslims want. The caliphate is how to bring the Ummah together, the Ummah being all the people who follow who follow Islam, all the people who are Muslim, and it brings it up under one world order. And that's where they've got a little bit of a problem. What's not clear, well, I'll put it this way, the West trying to do something there will have a major problem, major problem, because whatever the West does, it will be perceived as wrong, whatever the West do. Whether they do nothing or whether they go in, but going in they're not going to win at all, because Muslims always look after Muslims. The end, in terms of the caliphate and their idea of peace, which is everybody living under the word of Islam and under Allah and following those rules and norms, that is their vision, that is their idea of peace, and they will get it with the sword and with the gun. However, they do have a bit of a problem just within the Muslim society itself. Now, they don't include Shia within this. The Shia have their own ideas and ideals and ideologies. That's totally different. They will always be at war, and that's where the Syria angle comes in, because the Alawites, Assad, are a part of Shia, as is Iran, and the majority of Iraq is Shia. So they run through there and they behead and they kill. Now, there are other organisations who do not accept Islamic State. And I say Islamic State rather than ISIS or ISIL, because ISIS is Islamic State Syria and ISIL is Islamic State Iraq and Levant. So it's all Islamic State. The extra bits on the end are just where they were at that time. And now they've claimed totality. Now the Muslim Brotherhood has gone against them, which will be interesting. I think his name is Zawahar al-Qaradawi or something. And there's been a lot of very interesting fatwas, for want of a better word, between the organisations. And Islamic State just basically taking the piss out of Muslim Brotherhood, telling them to go screw themselves. But the Muslim Brotherhood believes that the caliphate will come through from Turkey, and they want Turkey to take things forward. Gaza and Hamas are seen as apostates, and there's a lot of bad blood between them and Islamic State, which is very interesting. The Turkey angle is furthermore interesting because Turkey has blocked off the Ataturk Dam just north of the Iraq border, which was providing electricity and water through into Iraq. And Islamic State have turned around and said basically either turn it back on or we're coming to take it. They will be very much prepared to go into Turkey to sort that out. So I get the feeling that the whole of the Middle East is just going to blow up. It's just they're not going to have the chance to actually hit the West, not for a long time anyway. And the only thing that will hit us is the pulling of heartstrings, in terms of the deaths and executions of innocent people, men, women and children who just don't fit into the Islamic State way of thinking, irrespective from where it's at. But if they do manage to continue and take forward what Muhammad started back 14 centuries ago, and then was taken further forward by Saladin and the other caliphs. I don't even know whether Saladin was actually a caliph or whether he was just a fighter, but he's one of the best known. Their view is to take over the world, and the way that they did it then, they basically spread out from the centre of the Middle East, up Turkey, across India, across the north of Africa, and even into Spain. That's where the Moors are from. So I don't think that that's going to hit us for quite a while, because they're going to need to sort out their own internal problems while they all fight to take, I wouldn't say control, but force, power, governance, which will lead to their control. I can see the Islamic State actually being able to do this in quite a big way. They're getting a lot of people from other countries who are diaspora or second or third generation diaspora, who will be prepared to go. My personal view is let them go, make sure they hand their passport over on the way out, and that'll do. Goodbye, see ya. It's just a very difficult situation where the last thing that we want is these people back. These people being people who are very happy to behead people, to fight for their beliefs, rather than use the political process that the Westerners are generally used to. I say generally because we do have nutters around as well who will quite happily take things forward in respect of bombing places and terrorism acts and trying to do things by force instead of through the political process. But our way of doing stuff is through the political process. It's a democracy, it's a peaceful way of doing it, it's through a majority vote, the way of doing it, and it's through discussion rather than force. What will happen, what is likely to happen, is that the fight will come to us in some way. And that fight will be bloody, it will be horrible. If people have been watching the World War I stuff, it'll be very much like that. We've no idea where it will come from. We've no idea whether there will be a rise in this sort of what we would perceive as radicalism from within our own borders, from the diaspora that are here. Who knows? Hopefully not. But the one thing that we do know is that Muslims who follow the Quran do want to live under one ummah. They do not believe in nationality, they do not believe in borders in such respects that we do. So it's no use talking about that sort of stuff. It's no use our political commentators mentioning anything of it. Anyway, as far as I can see, these are bad times ahead, not only for the West, but for the whole world, because we have left ourselves wide open to this sort of stuff, and we are now up against an enemy that is not interested in talking, is not interested in the political democratic process. They have their own process, and their own process is the Quran, and taking it forward in that way. And if we don't understand the Quran and understand those elements within the Quran that give people their justification for doing these things, then that's our problem. We've all got to start understanding this to be able to deal with it. Did I mention Nazism links there? I mean, it's not a case of linking to Nazism, but in the way of their propaganda, the way the Islamic State are doing it, they are targeting the young in the places where they're going to. The targeting is setting up schools and religious madrasas, things like that, to teach them the ideology. And the ideology is Islam and Muslim and hatred. And they're lapping it up because they're young, they are impressionable. That's what it's all about when you're that age. Oh, I've no idea what bloody speed I'm going because my speedo's not working, so I'm just taking it easy now. As for us, I said earlier, we all need to start understanding where they're coming from, what their ideology is, what they're trying to achieve. And that ideology is that Islam is a political ideology, it's not just a religion. It has all the ways of telling people what to do in certain situations and how they treat other people. We do have a problem coming. I think the major problem for the moment is going to be confined mostly to the Middle East, and it could just be complete bloodshed. While here, I'm hoping that our liberal, exceptionally liberal views will be, how should I put it? We'll be taking a bit of a knock, and some people will be looking at what they've said previously and what they believe. There is a Dutch anti-terror official who has just been totally reprimanded and pretty much kicked out of Parliament for saying a load of anti-Israel stuff in relation to Islamic State, linking Islamic State to Israel. What an absolute load of conspiracy bollocks. Some people just don't know when they've been completely taken in. And to have these people who are at the forefront of developing policies for democratic countries, trying to instill these liberal ideologies that allow hatred and partisan ideas into our country, because people just want to say, oh, look how nice we are. We have a problem. I'm not saying it's all Muslims, but all of them want the caliphate. Maybe not this caliphate, but if it comes to pass, they will all take it. And they'll take it gladly. And that seems to be what our problem is. Signing out once I'm round this corner.